The debris field stretched for miles. Broken ships, scattered metal, and the silent remains of a battle that ended 3 weeks ago. Taeyang guided his salvage vessel through the wreckage carefully. His fingers moved across the controls with practiced ease. He had been doing this work for 5 years now, ever since Hyejin died. The silence of space suited him better than the noise of stations and colonies. His ship, the Morning Light, was small but reliable. It had enough room for one person and whatever salvage he could fit in the cargo hold. Today's haul was decent. Some intact engine parts, a few data cores that might still have value, and several tons of processed metal. Nothing spectacular, but enough to pay the bills and send money back to Nari. His daughter was 12 now, staying with his sister's family on Waystation Kepler 9. She deserved better than watching her father drift through debris fields. She deserved a real home, a real life. But this was all he could manage right now. The pain of losing Hyejin still felt too fresh to return to normal life. The scanner beeped. Something small appeared on his screen, tucked behind a shattered frigate, probably just another piece of wreckage. But Taeyang had learned to check everything. Sometimes the smallest signatures held the most valuable salvage. He brought the Morning Light closer. The object came into view through his front window. It was an escape pod, barely intact. Half of its hull was scorched black. The life support light flickered weakly. Someone might still be inside. Taeyang's hand hovered over the controls. Rescue operations during wartime were complicated. If the pod contained enemy soldiers, he could be arrested for aiding the opposition. The war between the Valen Empire and the Torth Alliance had made everyone paranoid. Humans tried to stay neutral, but neutrality had rules. Strict rules. The life support light flickered again, weaker this time. Taeyang cursed under his breath and moved his ship closer. He couldn't just leave someone to die. That wasn't who he was. That wasn't what Hyejin would have wanted. He used the cargo claw to grab the pod and pull it into his ship's small airlock. The decontamination cycle ran automatically. Warning lights flashed across his console. The pod's biosignature wasn't human. It wasn't Torth either. Valen Taeyang's stomach tightened. The Velans were known throughout the galaxy for their cold logic and efficient cruelty. They looked like living crystal, their bodies made of a silicon-based biology that humans barely understood. Most importantly, they were on the losing side of this war. Harboring a Velan could destroy his life. The airlock finished cycling. Taeyang stood at the door, his hand on the release button. He could jettison the pod back into space. Pretend he never saw it. No one would know. The life support light went dark. He hit the button. The door opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. The escape pod sat in the middle of his small cargo bay, smoke rising from its damaged systems. Taeyang grabbed a crowbar and forced the pod's emergency release. The door fell open. A small figure tumbled out onto the metal floor. It was a child. A Velan child, her crystalline body barely 3 feet tall. Her surface flickered with dull colors shifting between gray and dark blue. Taeyang had read that Valen colors showed emotions, but he didn't know which colors meant what. She wasn't moving. He knelt beside her, his mind racing. Human medical training, Valen biology, nothing in his experience prepared him for this. Her body was hot to the touch, much hotter than human skin. Was that normal? Was she dying? The child's eyes opened. They were like diamonds, multifaceted and bright. She saw him and her body flash deep red. She tried to scramble backward but was too weak. A sound came from her, high-pitched and terrified. Not words, just fear. "It's okay," Taeyang said softly, holding his hands up. "I'm not going to hurt you. You're safe now." She didn't understand him. Of course she didn't, but his tone seemed to register. The red faded slightly. Her body went still, watching him with those diamond eyes. Taeyang slowly reached for his scanner. He needed to know how badly she was hurt. The device hummed as it passed over her body. The results made his blood run cold. Severe malnutrition, dehydration, multiple fractures in her crystalline structure, internal damage he couldn't even identify. She should already be dead. "Okay," he said, more to himself than to her. "Okay, medical bay, now." He gently lifted her. She was lighter than he expected, her body warm and smooth like heated glass. She made that sound again, but quieter, less afraid, more confused. He carried her to the small medical bay and laid her on the table. The next 3 days became a blur. Taeyang barely slept. His ship's medical database had almost nothing about Velen physiology. He accessed every black market medical archive he could find, trading valuable salvage codes for restricted information. Velen children needed specific mineral supplements. Their body temperature ran 40 degrees hotter than humans. They required almost no water but absorbed certain gases through their skin. He improvised. Ground up mineral tablets and mixed them with a paste the database suggested. Used his ship's atmospheric controls to add trace amounts of argon to the medical bay. Watched her temperature, her color shifts, her breathing rate. The child remained unconscious for most of it. Sometimes she would wake, see him, and make small, frightened sounds. Taeyang would talk to her softly while he worked. It didn't matter that she couldn't understand. Heejin always said his voice was calming. Maybe that worked across species. On the third day, she woke up fully. Her body shifted to a pale yellow color. Taeyang had learned that meant curiosity. She sat up slowly, looking around the medical bay. Then she looked at him. He smiled, tired beyond measure. "Hello there. I'm Taeyang. Can you understand me?" She tilted her head, made a sound melodic and strange. The translation device on his wrist caught it, struggled, then displayed broken text. "Where?" "Parent," his smile faded. He thought of the destroyed convoy, the debris field, the single escape pod. "I don't know. I'm sorry. You're safe here, though. I promise." She stared at him for a long moment. Then her body shifted through several colors, too fast for him to interpret. She made another sound, softer this time. The translator caught it. "Alone?" "No," Taeyang said firmly. "Not alone. Not anymore." He didn't know why he said it, didn't know what it meant for either of them. But the child's colors shifted to something warmer, something that looked almost like relief. She reached out a small crystalline hand and touched his arm gently. Taeyang looked at her, this small alien child who should have been his enemy, and he made a decision that would change everything. He would call her Sora, because when light hit her body just right, she looked like the sky filled with stars, and he would keep her safe no matter what the galaxy said about it. The morning light continued its journey toward way station Kepler 9. In the medical bay, a small Velen child slept peacefully for the first time in weeks while a human sat nearby, watching over her with the fierce protectiveness of a father who had already lost too much. 3 weeks had passed since Taeyang found Sora in the debris field. She was stronger now, able to walk around the ship and communicate with simple words through the translator. She followed him everywhere, her crystalline body shifting to nervous purple colors whenever he left her sight for too long. At night, she slept in the spare storage room he had cleared out for her, but twice he found her curled up outside his door in the morning, as if afraid he might disappear. The morning light approached way station Kepler 9 slowly. Taeyang's hands were tight on the controls. He had spent the entire journey trying to figure out what to do. The right thing, the legal thing, was to report Sora to the authorities. They would process her as a war refugee, send her to one of the overcrowded camps, eventually return her to what remained of Velen space. But Taeyang had researched those camps. He had read the reports, seen the numbers. Thousands of refugee children went in, far fewer came out. The ones who did were often sold into labor contracts, their short lifespans making them valuable for dangerous work. The galaxy didn't care much about orphans, especially enemy orphans. Sora sat in the co-pilot chair, pressing her face against the window to watch the station grow larger. Her colors shifted to bright orange. What he had learned meant excitement. She pointed at the spinning sections of the station and made a musical sound. The translator caught it. "Big, so big!" "Yes, it's big," Taeyang said. "Sora, listen to me. When we go outside, stay close. Hold my hand. Don't run off, okay?" She looked at him with those diamond eyes and nodded. "Stay close. Hold hand." Her pronunciation was getting better. The docking process was routine. Taeyang paid his fees, logged his salvage manifest, avoided mentioning the additional passenger. His heart pounded the entire time, waiting for alarms for security teams for someone to notice. But no one did. The docking officer barely looked at him, bored and tired from processing hundreds of ships every day. Taeyang took Sora's hand. Her crystalline fingers were warm against his palm. They walked through the airlock together, into the busy corridors of Kepler 9. People stared. Of course they stared. Velen civilians were rare this far into neutral space. A Velen child was almost unheard of. Taeyang ignored the looks, the whispers, the way people moved away from them. He kept walking toward the residential section where his sister lived with her family. Sora pressed closer to him, her body flashing nervous purple again. The crowd, the noise, the stares, it was too much for her. "Taeyang," she whispered. "Almost there," he said. "Just a little further." His sister's home was in Section D, a modest apartment suitable for families. Taeyang stood at the door for a moment, gathering his courage. He hadn't told his sister about Sora. How could he explain this over a comm channel? He pressed the door chime. His sister opened the door. She looked tired, worn down by years of raising 3 kids alone while her husband worked on distant colonies. Her eyes widened when she saw Sora. "Taeyang." "What?" "I know," he said quickly. "I know this is strange. Can we come in, please?" She stepped aside, still staring at Sora. They entered the apartment. Nari was in the living area working on homework. She looked up when they entered, and her expression went through a dozen emotions in seconds. Surprise, confusion, curiosity, and then something softer. Wonder, maybe, Dad? Nari stood up slowly. She was taller than last time he saw her, growing up too fast. Is she? Yeah, this is Sora, Taeyang said. I found her 3 weeks ago. She was alone. Hurt. I couldn't just leave her. His sister pulled him aside, lowering her voice. Taeyang, do you understand what you're doing? That's a villain. If the authorities find out you've been harboring her, I know the risks. Do you? You could lose your license, your freedom. They could take Nari away, say you're unfit. Her voice was sharp with worry. You can't keep her. You have to report her. Taeyang looked at Sora. She stood in the middle of the room, small and alone, her colors shifting uncertainly. Nari approached her slowly, carefully, like approaching a wild animal. She knelt down to Sora's height and smiled. Hi, Nari said softly. I'm Nari, you're very pretty. I've never seen anyone like you before. Sora tilted her head. Her colors shifted to pale yellow, the curiosity color. Nari? She repeated. Yes, that's my name. Nari reached into her pocket and pulled out a small stuffed animal, a worn rabbit with one ear shorter than the other. This is Hoppy. He was my mom's when she was little, then mine. Do you want to hold him? Sora looked at the toy, then at Nari, then back at the toy. Slowly, she reached out and took it. Her colors shifted through a rainbow of shades Taeyang had never seen before. She held the rabbit close and made a sound, soft and wondering. The translator displayed, Gift? For me? For you, Nari confirmed. Friends share things. Are we friends? Sora's entire body turned bright gold. She nodded quickly, enthusiastically. Friends. Taeyang felt something break open in his chest. His sister looked at him, her expression softening. She sighed heavily. You're really going to do this, aren't you? I have to, he said quietly. I can't send her back to nothing. I won't. Then you'll need help. You can't raise a child on a salvage ship. Especially not, she looked at Sora again. Especially not her. She'll need stability, school, other children, a home, I know. I've been thinking about it. There's a colony, Sabiol. They need mechanics. I could get work there. Settle down. The words felt strange in his mouth. He had been running for 5 years, unable to face normal life without Hijin. But looking at Sora and Nari together, something shifted inside him. That evening, they had dinner together. Taeyang had prepared food he thought Sora could eat, based on his research. Mineral-rich vegetables, certain protein supplements mixed into a thick paste. She tried everything carefully, her colors shifting with each new taste. When she tried something she didn't like, her body flashed bright orange, and she made a face. Nari laughed. Then Sora started laughing too. That wind chime sound that made everyone stop and listen. It was pure joy, uncomplicated and beautiful. After dinner, Nari showed Sora her room, her toys, her books. Sora absorbed everything with wonder. She had never seen most of these things before. Regular children's toys, colorful books, soft blankets. The simple comforts of childhood that most species took for granted. Taeyang watched them from the doorway. His sister stood beside him. Velen children aren't supposed to laugh, she said quietly. I looked it up while you were eating. Their species raises children in collective centers. Emotions are discouraged. They're trained from birth to be logical, efficient, short-lived workers for the Empire. That's terrible, Taeyang said. Yes, it is. She paused. What you're doing, it's going to change her. She'll never fit into Valen society. She'll be caught between two worlds. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe she can be something new, something better. He watched Nari teach Sora a simple hand-clapping game. Every child deserves to laugh. His sister nodded slowly. The galaxy is going to think you're crazy. Probably. Humans already have a reputation for being too emotional, too attached. This is going to make it worse. I don't care what the galaxy thinks. She smiled slightly. Hyejin would be proud of you. She always said your stubbornness would change the world someday. I thought she was exaggerating. That night, Sora slept in Nari's room. Taeyang checked on them before bed and found them curled up together. Nari's arm around Sora's crystalline shoulders, the stuffed rabbit tucked between them. Sora's body glowed with soft, peaceful colors even in sleep. Taeyang made his decision then. He would take the job on Sebiol. He would give Sora and Nari a real home. He would face whatever consequences came from keeping an alien child. Because that was what humans did. They saw someone who needed help and they said yes. Even when it was difficult. Even when it was dangerous. Even when the entire galaxy said no, tomorrow he would start making arrangements. Tonight he let himself hope that maybe, just maybe, they could actually be a family. 4 months passed like a dream. Taeyang had taken the job on Sebiol Colony, a small human settlement on a moon with breathable air and manageable gravity. The work was steady, fixing ships and equipment for the colonists. The pay was less than salvage work, but it was reliable. More importantly, it let him come home every night. Home was a small house on the edge of the colony. 3 rooms, a kitchen, a yard where strange purple grass grew. Nari loved it. She had friends now. Went to the local school. Complained about homework like a normal 12-year-old. She smiled more than she had in years. Sora thrived. She attended school with Nari, sitting in classes designed for human children and trying her best to keep up. Math confused her. The base 10 system making no sense to someone whose species counted in base 8. But art class was different. She created sculptures from colored glass and crystal that made her teachers stop and stare. She hummed when she worked, that wind chime sound that had become familiar around their house. The other children were cautious at first. A Velen child was strange, unusual, maybe scary. But Sora had learned smiles from Nari, had learned jokes and games and how to share snacks even though she couldn't eat most of them. Within weeks she had friends. Real friends who argued with anyone who called her names or stared too long. Every night Sora would run to Taeyang when he came home from work. "Dad!" she would call out, her colors flashing bright gold. The word came easily to her now. She had asked Nari what to call him and Nari had said Dad, and that was that. Taeyang's heart broke and mended itself every time he heard it. But peace never lasted forever. The news came through official channels. A Velen diplomatic envoy was arriving on Sebiol for trade negotiations. The war was ending, territories being redrawn, economies being rebuilt. The galaxy was trying to return to normal. Ambassador Krelith would be visiting for 3 days. Taeyang tried not to worry. Sebiol was a small colony. Why would an ambassador care about one child? But stories spread in small communities. Everyone knew about Taeyang's family, about the human man raising a Velen daughter. People thought it was sweet, unusual, maybe a bit strange. They didn't see the danger. Ambassador Krelith heard the stories on his second day. Someone mentioned it during a dinner, a curious footnote about human eccentricity. The ambassador's crystalline face showed no expression, but he asked questions. Where did this child live? How old was she? How did she come to be here? The next morning there was a knock on Taeyang's door. He opened it to find Ambassador Krelith standing there, flanked by 2 security officers. The ambassador's body was a deep blue color, which Taeyang had learned meant serious displeasure. "I am Ambassador Krelith," the Velen said, his voice flat and cold. "I understand you are harboring a Velen child. I demand to see her immediately." Taeyang's stomach dropped. "She's at school. She's not. Bring her here now." There was no room for argument in that voice. Taeyang sent a message to the school. 20 minutes later, Nari and Sora came running up the path to the house. Sora saw the Velen adults and stopped. Her color shifted to dark red, the fear color. She moved behind Taeyang, pressing against his leg. Krelith stared at her. His colors shifted through patterns Taeyang couldn't read. "Child, what is your designation?" Sora didn't answer. She gripped Taeyang's hand tighter. "Her name is Sora," Taeyang said firmly. "Name," Kralith repeated, and there was something bitter in his voice. Names are for individuals. Valen children have designations until they complete their training. He looked at Sora again. Come here, child. Let me see you. Sora shook her head, hiding further behind Taiyang. Kralith's colors darkened. This is worse than I thought. You may enter, human. We must speak. Inside the house, Kralith looked around with obvious distaste. Children's drawings on the walls. Toys scattered across the floor. Photos of Taeyang, Nari, and Sora together, smiling. The ambassador stopped at one photo, studying it for a long moment. What have you done to her? Kralith asked quietly. I saved her life, Taeyang said. She was dying when I found her. No, I mean, what have you done to her mind? Her spirit? Kralith turned to face him. Look at her. She displays emotions freely. She uses a personal name. She calls you Dad, a familial designation that has no meaning across species. She attends school with aliens. She plays with toys. His voice grew colder. You are ruining her. Ruining her? Anger flared in Taeyang's chest. She's happy. She's healthy. She has friends and a family who love her. Love. Kralith said the word like it was poison. Human emotional attachment. It is possessive, irrational, and ultimately harmful. This child will never function in Velen society now. She will be an outcast, unable to fulfill her purpose. You have destroyed her future for your own emotional satisfaction. Her purpose? Taeyang stepped forward. She's 8 years old. Her purpose is to be a child, to learn and grow and be happy. Happiness is irrelevant. Velen children are raised in collective education centers, trained for efficient service to the Empire. Their lifespan is short, 40 standard years at most. Every moment must be optimized. Emotion is wasteful. Attachment is dangerous. You have taught her to be weak. Nari had been quiet until now, but at those words she moved to stand beside her father. She's not weak. She's the bravest person I know. She learned a new language. She goes to school with people who look nothing like her. She tries things that scare her. That's not weak. Kralith looked at Nari with something almost like pity. You are a child yourself. You do not understand. I understand that Sora was alone and scared and my dad helped her. I understand that she cries when she's sad and laughs when she's happy and hugs us when she needs comfort. If that's wrong, then I don't want to understand your way. Sora had been silent through all of this, her colors shifting rapidly, but now she moved forward, standing between Taeyang and the ambassador. When she spoke, her voice was small but clear. I don't want to go back. Kralith looked down at her. That is not your choice to make. Under Velen law, you are property of the Empire. Orphaned children become wards of the state. You will be collected and returned to proper education facilities. No. The word came out firm. Sora's colors shifted to something Taeyang had never seen before. Bright red mixed with gold. Defiance and love together. This is my family. Taeyang is my dad. Nari is my sister. This is my home. This is an illusion, Kralith said. These humans are not your family. You are genetically, culturally, and legally Velen. You belong with your own kind. My own kind left me to die in an escape pod, Sora said, and her voice cracked. My own kind put me on a ship with strangers and told me to be quiet and useful. My own kind never asked if I was scared or hurt or lonely. Taeyang found me and stayed awake for 3 days, making sure I didn't die. Nari gave me her mother's toy, the most important thing she owned. They chose me. That makes them my family. The room went silent. Even Kralith seemed taken aback by the outburst. His colors shifted to something softer, just for a moment. Then they hardened again. Your emotional state is proof of contamination, he said finally. This only reinforces my decision. You will be collected tomorrow morning and transported to the nearest Velen processing center. From there, you will be sent home. This is her home, Taeyang said. This is a human dwelling. You are not her father. Regardless of what word she uses, you have no legal right to keep her. Kralith moved toward the door. I suggest you prepare her for departure. Make it easier for everyone. After he left, Sora collapsed into Taeyang's arms, crying. Her body flashed through painful colors, grief and fear mixed together. Nari wrapped her arms around both of them, and they stood there in the middle of their small living room, holding on to each other like drowning people holding on to wreckage. That night, after Sora finally fell asleep, Nari found Taeyang sitting in the kitchen. He was researching galactic law on his tablet, looking for anything that might help. His daughter sat down across from him. Her eyes were red from crying. Dad, she said quietly, Can Sora stay forever, please? Taeyang looked at his daughter at the desperation in her face. He thought about Sora sleeping in the next room, clutching that stuffed rabbit. He thought about Ambassador Krelith's cold certainty, about laws and empires and the way the galaxy worked. I don't know, he said honestly. The law isn't on our side. I'm just one person. I don't have money or power or influence, but you'll try? Nari asked. You won't just let them take her? Taeyang reached across the table and took his daughter's hand. I promise you I will do everything I can. Even if the whole galaxy says no, I will keep saying yes, because that's what family does. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he made calls, sent messages, researched everything he could find about interspecies custody law. It seemed impossible. But impossible had never stopped humans before. The morning Ambassador Krelith came to collect Sora, he found security barriers around Taeyang's house. A legal notice was posted on the door. Taeyang had filed an emergency petition with the Galactic Court, claiming wrongful seizure of a dependent. It was a desperate move, a legal trick that bought them maybe a week. But it was something. The case moved faster than anyone expected. Galactic courts were usually slow, buried under centuries of bureaucracy. But this case was different. No human had ever challenged species repatriation law before. Legal experts from across the galaxy wanted to see what would happen. Media outlets picked up the story. Headlines appeared on 100 worlds. Human father fights empire for alien child. Taeyang couldn't afford a real lawyer. Instead, he got help from an unlikely source. A young human lawyer named Mirai, fresh from school and full of idealistic fire, took the case for free. She believed in what they were fighting for. She also knew they would probably lose. The law is clear, she told Taeyang during their first meeting. Valen children are property of the Valen state. You're not Valen. You have no genetic relationship to Sora. You didn't adopt her through official channels because those channels don't exist for cross-species adoption. In the eyes of galactic law, you're just a human who picked up a Valen child and refused to give her back. Then we changed the law, Taeyang said. Mirai laughed, but it was a sad sound. That's not how it works. Courts interpret law, they don't make it. The best we can hope for is finding a loophole, some technicality that lets you keep her. But honestly, I don't think we'll find one. But you'll try. I'll try. Because what you're doing is right, even if it's not legal. The court hearing was set for Station Unity, the massive neutral space station where galactic law was administered. Taeyang, Nari, and Sora traveled there with Mirai. The station was enormous, housing thousands of diplomats, lawyers, and officials from hundreds of species. Sora held Taeyang's hand the entire time, her colors shifting nervously between purple and gray. The courtroom was designed to accommodate multiple species. There were seats for beings with legs, platforms for those who floated, environmental pods for species that needed different atmospheres. The judge was Korthax, an ancient species known for their strict adherence to tradition and law. Judge Hanuel sat behind a raised bench, his four eyes watching everything with cold intelligence. The prosecution was led by a Valen legal expert named Coordinator Sula. She was efficient and emotionless, her crystalline body a steady blue color that never shifted. She laid out the case methodically. Taeyang had no legal right to Sora. Valen law was clear. The child must be returned. The human claims he saved this child, Sula said, her voice flat. But he violated numerous laws in doing so. He failed to report finding a Valen national. He transported her across borders without documentation. He kept her for months without notifying proper authorities. He has indoctrinated her with human cultural values, compromising her ability to function in Valen society. These are not the actions of a savior. These are the actions of a kidnapper. Taeyang sat at the defense table, his hands clenched. Nari sat behind him in the gallery, Sora beside her. They weren't allowed to speak yet. They could only listen as the prosecution painted Taeyang as a criminal motivated by selfish human emotionalism. Then it was Mirai's turn. She stood up, and despite her youth and inexperience, her voice was strong. The prosecution wants you to see this as a simple case of law violation. It's not. This is a case about what we value as a galactic community. Do we value procedure over life? Do we value tradition over happiness? Do we value species loyalty over individual well-being? She brought up evidence. Medical records showing Sora's condition when Taeyang found her. Hours from death. Records of the refugee camps, the statistics about orphaned Velan children, testimony from Sora's school, showing her progress, her friendships, her joy in learning, photos of their family together. Taeyang didn't kidnap Sora, Mirai said. He rescued her, and in the months since he has given her something no Velan institution ever would. A childhood love, a family. The prosecution says he has ruined her for Velan society. I say he has saved her from a society that sees children as resources rather than individuals. The courtroom erupted. Velan diplomats protested. Other species murmured among themselves. Judge Hanuel called for order, his voice booming across the chamber. The arguments went on for hours. Legal precedents were cited, laws were debated, philosophies were discussed. But Taeyang barely heard any of it. He kept looking back at Sora, at her frightened colors, at the way she held onto Nari's hand. Finally, Judge Hanuel spoke. This court recognizes the complexity of this case. However, law is law. The human Taeyang has no legal standing to keep the Velan child. She must be returned to Velan custody. The gallery erupted again. Nari started crying. Sora's colors flashed through a dozen shades of grief and fear. Taeyang felt something break inside him. But Mirai wasn't done. Your Honor, before you finalize this decision, there is one more witness. One whose voice hasn't been heard yet. I request permission for Sora to testify. Judge Hanuel's 4 eyes focused on the young lawyer. The child is 8 years old. She has no legal standing to testify. She's the subject of this entire case, Mirai argued. She's the one whose life will be decided here. Doesn't she deserve a voice? The judge considered this. Then slowly he nodded. Very well. The child may speak, but keep it brief. Sora walked to the witness platform, small and alone in the massive courtroom. She looked back at Taeyang once, her colors flickering with fear. He nodded encouragement. You can do this. A translator device was attached to the platform, allowing her words to be understood by all species present. Sora stood there for a moment, gathering courage. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but clear. Before Taeyang found me, I lived in a collective center, she began. There were 50 other children there. We had numbers, not names. We were taught that emotions were wrong, that individual thoughts were selfish, that our purpose was to serve the Empire efficiently before our short lives ended. She paused, her colors shifting to darker shades. I was always alone. Even with 50 other children, I was alone. We weren't allowed to touch each other. Weren't allowed to play. Weren't allowed to cry. When I was scared, I had to hide it. When I was sad, I had to pretend I wasn't. When I wanted someone to hold me and tell me everything would be okay, there was no one. The courtroom was silent. Every being present listened to her words. Then the war came. They put us on ships, told us we were being relocated. The ship was attacked. I ended up in an escape pod, alone in the dark, injured and dying. I thought that was how I would end. Alone. Always alone. Her colors shifted to gold, warm and bright. But then Taeyang found me. He didn't have to help me. I was the enemy. It was dangerous and illegal. But he did it anyway. He stayed awake for days, making sure I survived. He talked to me even when I couldn't understand. He held my hand when I was scared. And when I asked if I was alone, he said no. Tears were running down Nari's face in the gallery. Even some of the other species in the courtroom seemed moved. Humans taught me something my own species never did, Sora continued. They taught me that family isn't about biology or law or species. It's about who stays when everything is dark. It's about who holds you when you cry. It's about who says yes when everyone else says no. She looked directly at Judge Hanuel. The prosecution says I've been ruined for Velan society. Maybe that's true. I don't want to stop feeling things. I don't want to be alone again. I don't want to live in a place where children are numbers and love is weakness. If that makes me a bad Velan, then I'm okay with that. Her voice grew stronger. Taeyang is my dad. Not because of DNA or law or official papers. Because he chose me. Because he loves me. Because when I had no one, he said yes. That's what makes him my father. That's what makes Nari my sister. That's what makes us a family. She turned to look at Taeyang, and her colors blazed with gold and warm orange. Please don't make me leave them. They're all I have. They're all I want. The courtroom was completely silent. Even Coordinator Sula seemed at a loss for words. Judge Hanuel looked down at Sora for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he spoke. Human Taeyang, approach the bench. Taeyang stood on shaking legs and walked forward. The judge looked at him with all 4 eyes. Do you understand what you are taking on? This child will never be fully Velen or fully human. She will struggle between two worlds for her entire life. She will face discrimination, confusion, identity crises. The easy path would be to let her return to her own species. Do you understand this? Taeyang met the judge's eyes steadily. Your Honor, every parent knows their child will struggle. That's not a reason to abandon them. That's the reason you hold on tighter. Sora is my daughter. I don't care what species she is or how hard things get. I will be there for her, always. Judge Hanuel leaned back in his seat. The courtroom waited, breath held for his decision. The ancient judge looked at Taeyang, at Sora, at the evidence spread before him, and then slowly he began to speak. Judge Hanuel's voice filled the courtroom. This court has reviewed all evidence and testimony. The law is indeed clear. Velen children are wards of the Velen state. However, there is an older law, one that predates species-specific legislation. Galactic Law, Article 7, states that any being has the right to claim sanctuary with another being if their life or well-being is in immediate danger. He paused, letting the words sink in. The evidence shows that Sora was in immediate danger when found. The evidence also shows that Velen refugee processing has a documented failure rate of 67% for children. Returning her to Velen custody would place her in statistical danger. Therefore, under Article 7, this court recognizes Taeyang's claim of sanctuary. The courtroom erupted into chaos. Velen diplomats shouted protests. Other species murmured in shock. This was unprecedented. Mirai grabbed Taeyang's arm, her eyes wide. He's doing it, she whispered. He's actually doing it. Judge Hanuel raised one hand, demanding silence. This ruling is narrow and specific. It does not overturn species repatriation law. However, it does establish that sanctuary claims can supersede those laws when a child's safety is at risk. Taeyang is granted legal custody of Sora, effective immediately. Sora's colors exploded into brilliant gold. She ran from the witness platform straight to Taeyang, who caught her in his arms. Nari rushed from the gallery to join them, and the three of them held each other while the courtroom descended into arguments and debates around them. The decision was controversial. It made headlines across the galaxy. Legal experts argued about its implications for weeks. The Velen Empire filed formal protests, but they were toothless. Judge Hanuel's ruling stood. Sora could stay, but the story didn't end there. In fact, it was only beginning. The case had been broadcast across dozens of worlds. Billions of beings watched a human fight an empire for an alien child. They watched Sora testify about loneliness and love. They watched a father say he would hold on tighter when things got hard. And something shifted in the collective consciousness of the galaxy. A month after the trial, a Korthax couple named Minho and Ji-Woo arrived at a human adoption agency. They wanted to adopt a human child orphaned in the war. The agency workers were confused. Cross-species adoption wasn't really done. There were no procedures, no forms, no precedents except the one Taeyang had set. But the couple insisted. They had watched the trial. They had lost their own son in the conflict and couldn't have more children. There was a human boy, 6 years old, with no family. He needed parents. They wanted to be parents. Why did species matter? The agency didn't know how to say no. They made it work. Within 3 months, there were 12 more cases. A human family adopting a Torth child, a Velen couple taking in a human orphan, a mixed group home on a neutral station housing children from 6 different species. The concept of chosen family, of saying yes to a child regardless of their species, spread like wildfire. On Saebyol, life returned to normal. Or at least a new kind of normal. Taeyang went to work each day. Nari and Sora went to school together. They had dinner as a family, did homework, argued about chores, laughed at jokes. They were ordinary in the most extraordinary way. Sora still struggled sometimes. She had nightmares about the escape pod, about being alone in the dark. Her Velen biology meant she would always be different from her human family. She couldn't eat most of their food. Her body temperature made it hard to hug for too long. She would only live 40 years, a fraction of human lifespans. But she was happy. She had friends who didn't care that she was different. She had teachers who accommodated her needs. She had a sister who shared everything with her, and she had a father who tucked her in every night and promised her she would never be alone again. 1 year after the trial, Taeyang received an unexpected visitor. Ambassador Kralith arrived at their home unannounced. Taeyang opened the door with caution, memories of their last meeting still fresh. Kralith's colors were different now, softer, uncertain. "May I speak with you?" he asked. They sat in the small living room. Kralith looked around at the family photos, the children's artwork, all the signs of normal family life. "I have been monitoring the situation," he said finally, "watching what has happened since the trial. The changes in galactic adoption practices, the protests from young Valens who want to leave collective centers, He paused, struggling with the word. "Families being formed across species lines. Is that why you're here?" Taeyang asked. "To blame me for disrupting the order?" "No, I came to apologize." Kralith's colors shifted to something almost like shame. "I believed I was protecting Sora. I believed our way was correct, that emotion was weakness, that efficiency was all that mattered. But I have been reading reports from Valen youth who left the collective centers. They describe the same thing Sora did. Loneliness, fear, the desperate need for connection that we teach them to suppress." He looked at Taeyang directly. "Our species has a short lifespan. We told ourselves that made emotional bonds wasteful, that we couldn't afford the time for family and love. But perhaps that was wrong. Perhaps a short life means we can't afford to waste any of it being alone." Taeyang didn't know what to say. This was the same being who had tried to take Sora away, who had called human love possessive and harmful. "The Velan Empire is beginning reforms," Kralith continued. "Slowly. Collective centers will be changed to allow more individual expression, more emotional development. It will take time, but it is happening. Because of what you did. Because you said yes when you should have said no." That evening, after Kralith left, Taeyang sat on his porch watching the sunset. Nari joined him, sitting on the step beside him. Sora was inside practicing a human musical instrument. The sounds were terrible but enthusiastic. "Dad," Nari said, "do you ever think about how weird our life is? How you accidentally started a galactic revolution just by being nice to someone?" Taeyang laughed. "I didn't mean to start anything, I just saw a child who needed help." "I know, but that's kind of the point, isn't it? You didn't do it to change the galaxy. You did it because it was right, and the galaxy changed anyway." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Nari spoke again. "There was a boy at school today. New kid just arrived. He's Torth and he's really shy. His parents died in the war. He's staying in the temporary housing unit." Taeyang looked at his daughter. "Nari, I was thinking maybe we could invite him for dinner sometime. Just to make him feel welcome, show him that someone cares. We barely have enough room in this house for 3 people. I know. I'm just saying dinner, that's all." But her eyes said something different. Before Taeyang could respond, an elderly Korthax man approached their house. It was Donghae, their neighbor. He walked slowly, his aged body moving carefully. He stopped at the bottom of their porch steps. "Taeyang," he said, "I need your help." "Of course. What do you need?" "My son died in the war. He left behind a child, my grandchild, on a distant colony. The child has been in temporary care for months. I want to bring them home, but I don't know how to do the paperwork. The cross-species adoption forms, the legal process. You understand these things now. Could you help me?" Taeyang started to say it was complicated, that he wasn't an expert, that he barely understood his own case, but Nari interrupted him. "Dad will help you," she said firmly. "That's what he does. He says yes." From inside the house, Sora's voice called out, "That's what humans do." Taeyang looked at his daughter, at his neighbor, at the house full of warmth and family behind him. He thought about how he had stumbled into this life accidentally, how one decision in a debris field had changed everything. He thought about all the lonely children across the galaxy, all the people who wanted to say yes but didn't know how. All the families waiting to be formed if someone just had the courage to try. And he realized something. Humanity's gift to the galaxy wasn't technology or art or military might. It was simpler than that. It was the stubborn, illogical, beautiful insistence that family was a choice. That love crossed all boundaries. That when someone needed help, you didn't ask if it was legal or logical or convenient. You just said yes. "I'll help you," Taeyang told Donghae. "Come inside. Let's figure this out together." That night, the house was full. Donghae stayed for dinner, discussing plans for bringing his grandchild home. Mirai called to tell them about 3 new cross-species adoption cases she was taking on. Nari talked about the new boy at school. Sora played her instrument, filling the house with her enthusiastic noise. It was chaotic. It was messy. It was beautiful. Taeyang stood in the kitchen, watching his family and friends gathered in the small living room. He thought about Hyejin, about how she always said his stubbornness would change the world someday. She had been right, though not in any way either of them could have imagined. Sora noticed him standing there and came over, her colors glowing warm and happy. "Dad, are you okay?" He pulled her into a careful hug, mindful of her heat. "I'm perfect, just thinking about how lucky I am. We're the lucky ones," she said. "You saved me." "No," Taeyang said softly. "We saved each other." Outside, stars filled the sky. Across the galaxy, lonely children were finding families. People were learning to say yes. The universe was slowly, carefully learning that the most powerful force in existence wasn't gravity.